How many of you are aware that the BCNE is in town? How many of you have gone to the BCNE? Oh, it's great. There's some animals there. My family and I, we went yesterday. It was a great time. And we got there just in time to watch a presentation from a professional, what she called Danger Magic. Which is very, very, very interesting. The fellow's name was Clinton W. Gray. He's a traveling musician. He actually was born and raised in Williams Lake, so a local fellow, a Canadian. But as we get there, he starts to talk about all the dangerous things he's going to do. And what appealed to me and what drew me in was he was talking about he was going to chop the arm off of a small child. And I thought, I want to see this. I want to be like, let's watch this. Well, as we're getting prepared to watch this, actually Dave Horton and some of his kids come along. You guys all know Dave, loud and boisterous. And so we start chatting and the show starts. So Dave sits down and we're at the back and we actually got a little rowdy and encouraging with this guy. And we really started to engage with the show and it was fantastic. And we fueled his performance like a speaker loves it when people actually start speaking back at him. And maybe we might have heckled him one time or two, but it was all good. But it came to the part in the show, in his magic act, where he was going to perform the really dangerous piece of potentially chopping off the arm of a child. Now, the problem with being loud and boisterous and rowdy and being partnered with Dave Horton at the back is his attention is drawn to us. And we have small children. And my small child, who's not so small, got chosen to have his arm chopped off. And I'm thinking, what have I done? Is this safe? And so Josh goes up and everyone's cheering him on. And he's got this contraption that Josh is supposed to stick his arm through. But he does a demonstration with the balloon first. And he brings the knife down through the balloon and the balloon pops. I was like, oh, this is real. This is getting real. This is really getting real. And so then, it's like, well, we're going to go with this. He said, this is going to get really exciting. One of two things is going to happen. Either the knife is going to come down through Joshua's arm, and he's going to be fine. It's not going to cut it. Or, he said, that man over there will call 911. Either way, we're going to have a lot of excitement. And it's going on, and I'm starting to get nervous, right? Sitting in the back, like, what if this thing really goes wrong? But God, would you show up and keep my son's arm because we don't need to go to the hospital again. We've been there enough this year. Right, Josh? Well, long story short, he did the act. Josh's arm is still attached. We didn't have to go to the hospital. He's safe and it's great. And it's just one of those little but God moments where, this was planned, but it really struck my mind. What if this actually happened? We've been hearing God stories all summer of God showing up on the scene and intervening and doing things. We've been hearing God stories of how life could have been drastically different if not for God showing up and changing the trajectory of what was going on. Story after story after story. And this story that we're going to get into is found in the book of Numbers. And I don't know how many of you have actually read or heard of this story, because if you're going to read the Bible in the order that it's laid out and written, we get to Genesis, and there's some great stories in there, and then we get through Exodus, and there's some really great stories of the people of Israel coming out of Egypt from slavery and being set free, and then we get into some boring books of Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, where there's some stories, and there's a lot of law, and it gets boring, and we Peter, and then we get to Joshua, and it's all good again. But this is found in the book of Numbers, and it's chapter 22, and it focuses on two individuals primarily. And it's a man by the name of Balaam, and another man, and his name is Balak. And we find ourselves starting in Numbers 22, starting verse 1. It says this: Then the Israelites traveled to the plains of Moab and camped along the Jordan across from Jericho. Now Balak, son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites, and Moab was terrified because there were so many people. Indeed, Moab was filled with dread because of the Israelites. You guys with me? You know where we're at in this story? Like, here's the problem with jumping into the middle of a story like this. We have no idea what's going on. Like, who are these guys? What's going on? What is this land? Why are we even talking about this? So to set the context, we got to figure out what's going on here. And if you go back a bunch of books and a bunch of chapters, we find that the people of Israel had been enslaved in Egypt for generations. God had finally brought them out on a journey toward the land he had promised them. He set them free. We heard the story of the Red Sea. The Ten Commandments happened. Dave shared a story last week about how there's a but God moment on the top of the mountain. And so they go on this journey. But through a series of poor choices and a lack of trust in God, that what should have been, a couple-month journey maybe, turned into about a 40-year trek of wandering around the desert. Well, they're coming to the end of this travel, and God is beginning to give them victories over the nations whose land he had promised to them. So God had promised the people of Israel a land, an inheritance. They're going to go sit here, they're going to reside, they're going to live, and they're going to prosper. It's going to be great. Now, in the ancient world, land was life. Land meant that you had security. Man meant that you had food so you could raise your crops. They didn't have Walmarts or Costco's or Save-Ons. You had to produce what you were going to live off of. You needed land to do that. Livestock, you had to raise livestock to get your meat products, to get your dairy products, your cows, goats, sheep, all of the animals. You need land for all these critters. This is what secured your future. And so nobody would ever just hand over the land, especially not to a foreign nation passing through. Like, who are these guys? This is our land, not theirs. Get out of here. So as Israel moved from territory to territory, kings grew nervous. They see this great horde, this great multitude of people coming through. They go out to battle against him, and God gives them victories, gives the nation of Israel victories over the nations whose land he'd promised them. Every time God was with his people, Israel prevailed. And this word spread quickly about this nomadic nation wandering through the desert that nobody could stop them. They were getting victory after victory after victory. And fear started to grip the region. And so that's kind of the context of where we're at jumping into the story as it pertains to the nation of Israel. And so now Israel has set up camp on the borders of a land called Moab. Moab's king, Balak, has seen what has happened to the nations before him, and the text tells us that Moab is terrified because there were so many people. And the fear is about to drive Balak to make a desperate and unexpected move. The Moabites said to the elders of Midian, "This horde is going to lick up everything around us as an ox licks up the grass of the field." So Balak, son of Zippor, who was king of Moab at that time, sent messengers to summon Balaam, son of Beor, who was at Pethor, there's some great names in here, near the Euphrates River in his native land. Balaam enters the scene. Who is this guy? Now, we don't know a whole lot about him, but we know enough through some writings in Scripture, through some commentaries, and digging up some ancient documents. One commentator, as I was digging into, calls him kind of a super prophet. There's someone who is known for seeking out the oracles of God and delivering messages that carried weight. Balaam had a reputation that when he spoke, whether it be a blessing or a curse, people believed it because it happened. Leaders and nations sought him out, convinced that his words would shape outcomes. This is what he did. But Balaam, he didn't exactly work for free. This guy, he would actually put a price on his services. He'd contract himself out, and he was willing to use his prophetic influence for personal gain. That's what he did. He turned a spiritual gift into a profitable exercise. And so we sense that this guy's a complex figure. He's been gifted. He's widely respected. But he's walking a fine line between serving God's purposes and serving his own. Feel the tension already, don't you? And this tension is about to be tested in a way that he never expected. So what happens as we go through our story is Balak sends a delegation out to find Balaam. And he's carrying with him a fee expected for divination. Now, here's the money. We've got it. We're good to go, and come and work for us. We're going to contract your services. Oh, so when they arrive, Balaam tells him to stick around for the night. I'm going to go see what the Lord has to say, and I'll come circle back in the morning, and we'll see what's going on. So at first glance in this story, Balaam seems to make the right move. He doesn't jump at the offer initially. He doesn't give him an immediate yes or no. Instead, he pauses to seek an audience with God before making his decision. And that is a great biblical principle, church. It really is. It's the kind of response that we'd hope for from someone claiming to speak for the Lord. So that night, Balaam goes to meet with God, and here's how the conversation unfolds. God came to Balaam and asked, "Who are these men with you?" Balaam said to God, "Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab, sent me this message. A people that has come out of Egypt covers the face of the land. Now come and put a curse on them for me. Perhaps then I will be able to fight them and drive them away." But God, and there's the first but God in the text of two. There's two of them in this story. But God said to Balaam, "Do not go with them. You must not put a curse on these people because they are blessed." The Lord instructs Balaam to stay where he's at. Don't curse Israel. They're blessed. They're my people. I've given them a promise. Don't touch them. The command is pretty straightforward. And we're going to come back to this a little bit later. We're going to talk about the significance of this moment. But there's a whole lot more story to unpack as we get into it. So let's carry on. The next morning, Balaam gets up and he tells the officials, "The Lord has refused to let me go with you." So the delegation heads back to Moab to deliver the disappointing news to King Balak. So what did Balak do? Well, this is a guy that won't take no for an answer. He thinks his land, maybe even his very life, is dependent on defeating the nation of Israel before they get there. So he doubles down. This time, he says, "I think I'm going to actually send you back, but I'm going to send a bigger delegation back with more important officials and more money. Let's see if we can't convince this guy to come and work for us." So he does that. He's determined to sweeten the deal and persuade Balaam to come work for him. So the second delegation, the bigger one with more money, they come to Balaam and said, "Well, this is what Balak, son of Zippor, says. Do not let anything keep you from coming to me, because I will reward you handsomely and do whatever you say. Come," here's the ask again, "and put a curse on these people for me." But Balaam answered them, "Even if Balak gave me all the silver and gold in his palace, I could not do anything great or small to go beyond the command of the Lord." But there's more. Why is there always more? Balaam continues, "Now spend the night here so that I can find out what else the Lord will tell me." That night God came to Balaam and said, "Since these men have come to summon you, go with them, but do only what I tell you." Balaam hears the second offer. The offer for more prestige, more honor, more money. Let's go. But here's his reply. "Even if Balak gave me all the silver and gold in his palace, I can't go. I can't do anything beyond the command of my Lord my God." And on the surface, this sounds like a rock-solid, uncompromising answer. He's saying all the right things. But then he adds, "But stay here tonight. I'm going to go talk to the Lord. Maybe he'll change his mind." And this is where we begin to see the cracks in Balaam's character. God has already spoken once, but Balaam leaves the door open. But what if? He's hoping that God might change his mind if the price is right. "God, look how this is going to profit me. Man, I'm going to be set up for life. This is the lottery, man. It's my meal ticket. God, would you let me go?" He is trying to persuade God that maybe you just might change his mind. But his actions really hint that to this offer that's on the table. So God comes to Balaam again that night and says, "Well, okay, they've come to summon you. Go with them, but do only what I tell you." And we see a complex decision happening here where God seems to give him permission, but God has not changed his will. He says, okay, the door's open, you go ahead, but only do what I tell you to do. So what happens? Well, the next morning, Balaam gets up, he saddles his donkey, and he sets off with the officials. We're going to see Balak. Not going to Winnipeg, going to Balak. And this is where the tension snaps into the open, and we encounter our second but God. Verse 22 says, but God was very angry when he went. And I wrestled with this, church. I spent like a whole 3 hours in Starbucks. Dave was doing sermon prep in one corner, I'm doing sermon prep, and I'm just stuck on this verse. What is happening here? God, didn't you give him permission to go? Why are you angry with him? Why is this a but God moment in the story? Well, even though Balaam's lips said, I will only speak what God says, his heart, his motivation, his character was leaning hard toward Balak was offering. Balaam wasn't motivated by God and his desire and his will and his plans. He was desired by the desires of the flesh, to be set up for life. This journey wasn't about obeying God's command. It was fueled by the lure of the reward. Remember, this guy is seen as a prophet for hire. This is what he does. Financial gain is probably the most significant motivator in his life. So God saw it, and he moved to confront it. You know, from verses 22 to 35, Numbers tells a story of a journey. Right? The text said that Balaam saddled his donkey, took off, and he's traveling down the road. And as he's riding his donkey with two servants alongside him, the angel of the Lord shows up on the scene. And he positions himself in the road right in front of Balaam and his donkey to oppose him. Now here's where it gets fascinating for me. The donkey can see the angel of the Lord. He can see him standing there with the sword drawn, posing a threat to the travelers. And Balaam can't. And you would think Balaam, being the super prophet, being the one who could speak with God, would be able and to know and be aware that the angel of the Lord is standing right there in front of him. But he can't. So what does the donkey do when he sees a threat? He might stop. But in this case, the donkey tries to go around. There was enough room on the path to get around. And Balaam is like, what are you trying to do? Why are you leaving the road? What is happening? And Balaam's getting a little choked that his donkey's not listening to him. He's trying to force him down the road, and the donkey's like, no, I want to go this way. There's a threat. And Balaam can't see the threat. And so he's getting annoyed, and he starts acting like my dad when he's on his horses, and the horse won't listen. And he starts to, you stupid horse, or you stupid donkey. He starts beating him in frustration, trying to force the donkey back on the road. Well, he gets around the angel of the Lord. They start moving back down the path to find where they're going. But as they go down the road, it narrows. And it narrows because it starts passing between two vineyards. And because you don't want traffic trampling through your vineyards, there's stone walls acting like guardrails on either side of the road. And so the road narrows. And as they hit this point in the road, the donkey again sees the angel of the Lord standing in front of him, right smack dab in the middle of the road. Like, it's just like, this donkey's like, oh my gosh, this is not good. And once again, Balaam cannot see this. He cannot see the threat. He cannot see the danger. So to avoid the threat, what the donkey does is he veers to the side and crushes Balaam's foot against one of the stone walls. That could be where the phrase, you caught between a rock and a hard place, comes in. And I don't know if you've ever ridden an animal but had your leg or your foot crushed. It is not pleasant. It hurts. Ask Jamie. Ask my wife what happens when you get your leg crushed. She's about 5 knee surgeries later as a result of an accident with a horse and a fence. It's not pleasant. So this Balaam, now he's in pain. Not only is he in pain, now he's angry and frustrated, and he's really starting to lose it. So Balaam lashes out and beats the donkey again before pressing forward. And then there's a third confrontation. Verse 26 says that the angel of the Lord moved ahead to a place where the path was so tight you could not get around. Didn't matter what you did. There's nowhere to get around. So when the donkey sees the angel blocking the way once again, he's done it. There's no escape route. He simply just lays down. Like, I'm checking out. I'm done. We're not going ahead. We can't go anywhere. I'm not running into this threat. I mean, it's a pretty smart donkey, actually. Like, would you do that? Would you want to keep going? But the donkey, he just lays down and says, we're checking out. We're not going any further. And so this is a breaking point for Balaam. Like, he's had it with his donkey. Enraged, he begins to beat the donkey with a staff. In his anger, he completely loses it, and it blinds him to the reality that something bigger is unfolding right in front of him. And here comes a moment no one sees coming. Verse 28 says, the Lord opened the donkey's mouth. Now, I've only ever heard of one other donkey that talked before. Right? Started out as just a donkey, and he's going around with all the fairy tale creatures being captured, and he gets sprinkled with fairy dust, and everyone's looking at this donkey, said, he can fly, and the donkey says, I can fly, wait, I can talk. And he spends like 4 or 5 movies pestering Shrek for the rest of his life, and it's terrible. This is not that donkey. This is a donkey that the Lord opened up his mouth in a supernatural way to have a conversation with Balaam. And this animal, this weary, beaten donkey, turns his head and speaks to Balaam. He says, what have I done to you to make you beat me these 3 times? Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm out in the barnyard and I'm having an encounter with a donkey and the donkey speaks to me, I'm shocked. I am pulled back. I'm like, what is happening here? Well, not Balaam. Again, he's so maybe blinded by what's going on. He just gets right back at the donkey and says, you've made a fool out of me. Man, donkey, if only I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now. Like, this guy's had it. And so the donkey actually pushes back. This is a dialogue. Am I not your own donkey, which you've always ridden to this day? Come on, Balaam, have I been in this habit of doing to you? The donkey's trying to say, look, I've never done this before. Shouldn't that tell you that something's going on here? Pay attention, Mr. Super Prophet. And then Balaam, he goes, probably a little bit still upset and angry and sore. I mean, his foot has been crushed. But he actually says, well, no, actually, you haven't been. You've been a pretty good donkey, actually. But it's comical in a way, isn't it? But it's also sobering that this prophet, whose reputation is staked on seeing and hearing from God, is so blinded by his anger and ambition that the donkey is speaking more sense than he is. The animal is the voice of reason, not the prophet. Well, as they have this encounter and they finish up this conversation, in verse 31 it says, the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his sword drawn. And Balaam's like, uh-oh, this ain't good. And so they have a conversation. The angel of the Lord asked Balaam, why have you beaten your donkey these 3 times? I came here to oppose you because your path is a reckless one before me. The donkey saw me and turned away from me these 3 times. If it had not turned away, I would certainly have killed you by now, but I would have spared it. Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, I have sinned. I did not realize you were standing in the road to oppose me. Now, if you are displeased, I will go back. The angel of the Lord said to Balaam, go with the men, but speak only what I tell you. So Balaam went with Balak's officials. Finally, Balaam sees what the donkey's been seeing all along. In an instant, everything changes. His stubbornness gives way to fear and humility, and he falls face down before the angel of the Lord. This is a turning point for Balaam in this story. He thought the donkey was the problem. But in reality, he was. The donkey had been protecting him. What looked like defiance on behalf of the animal was actually God's mercy, keeping Balaam from a path that would have led to his destruction. Now, Balaam, with his pride broken and his perspective realigned, he's in a place where he can truly hear what the Lord has to say. His character has been confronted and corrected. He's been humbled, prepared for what's next. So what happens? Well, they finish their journey. King Balak finally meets Balaam and presses him to do what he was hired for, to curse Israel. But Balaam stands firm, insisting that he can only speak the words that God put in his mouth. So on 3 separate occasions, Balaam seeks the Lord, and each time God gives him a message, not of cursing Israel, but a blessing over them. And each time, Balaam delivers exactly what God says to the letter. Now, if you're Balak, how's that working out for you? Like, what's your response? You hired this guy to curse a nation, and all he's doing is blessing them. Like, that's a terrible return on your investment, isn't it? Like, you're not doing what I'm asking you to do. So Balak, he's had enough. After the 3rd time, frustrated, maybe a little humiliated, he cancels the deal. He sends Balaam away and refuses to pay him. Before Balaam leaves, though, he delivers several more messages. Warnings of what would happen to Moab and to other nations if they chose to stand against Israel. Guys, we don't have time to get into all that today, so I'm going to encourage you, go read that on your own in the following chapters. It's fascinating to see what happens when God actually puts a hand of blessing on you, and he wants to protect you and he wants to keep you. It's really worth digging into. Do it for extra credit. I think we're into that now, right? We're doing extra credit things, so that's an extra credit project for you guys. Go read it on your own. Come hit me up next week about what you learned. But what a story. And it's one I actually never thought I'd be preaching. Like, to me, as a kid growing up in Sunday school, yeah, it's a talking donkey. And you know what I realized? It was never about the donkey. The story was never supposed to be about the donkey. There's so much in here that we can take away, but because we're in a But God series in the summer, I want to focus on the 2 But God references that popped up in the text. There's one that serves as a warning, and there's one that really serves as a blessing for us. But let's talk about the warning. Let's get the bad news out of the way, or the scary news. Numbers 22:22. But God was very angry when he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose Balaam. Man, in this part of the story, Balaam had set out with the Moabite officials to meet Balak. On the outside, it looked like Balaam was doing what God had said. But God, in his infinite mercy and wisdom and knowledge, and even in his love, saw past the appearance of obedience, and he saw straight into Balaam's heart. He saw his motivation. And what he saw was troubling. He saw greed. He saw self-interest. He saw a lust for power and control. He saw a desire to see self-serve first. And what he saw, and God knew that if that wasn't dealt with and challenged, if it was left unchecked, that would win out. It would lead Balaam straight to destruction. So God intervenes. He steps in to deal with Balaam's character, meeting him right where he was at. Even in his mixed motives. And God gave Balaam an encounter he would never forget. You know, and this isn't an Old Testament principle only. We see it played out today. We see the New Testament writers. You know, the writer of Hebrews actually doubles down on a proverb and says, "My son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline. And do not lose heart when he rebukes you, because the Lord disciplines the one he loves, and he chastens everyone he accepts as son." Like, this is a hard truth to wrestle, isn't it, church? That God disciplines those he loves. God disciplines me. He disciplines us. But he does it out of love. He does it for our safety and for protection. He sees us veering down a path we shouldn't be going. God says, I need to step in here. I'm a little ticked. I'm a little annoyed, but I'm stepping in. I'm going to correct your behavior because it's for your good. It's like being a parent, isn't it? You were thinking that, Josh? Yeah. Apparently that's what me and mom do. And it really is just like a parent. We see the things that our kids want to be doing. We see the paths they're going down. And sometimes we got to step in and say, hey, look, this isn't going to end well. Sometimes when you're a baby adult, sometimes all you can do is actually make them a light of it and then let them go down their path and then be there when they come back and say, I told you so, but I still love you and let's work through this. There's all kinds of principles, but discipline is a real thing and it's a good thing. And God does it to us out of love. He's trying to get our attention. He wants only what is good and best and life-giving for his kids. And I see this in the other but God moment in the story. But God said to Balaam, do not go with them. You must not have put a curse on these people, the nation of Israel, my children, because they are blessed. God himself steps in on behalf of his kids, the nation of Israel, and says, don't curse them. They're blessed. He had made a promise to his people, and as their father, he had placed them under his protection, and he was going to see his promise fulfilled. And here's what struck me in this story. While all this is going on, Israel had no idea. They're not involved in this. They're camped on the border, ready to do their thing, but they're not directly involved in the narrative. There's a king out there wanting to curse them, wanting to see them destroyed, be done with, eliminated, annihilated, and they got no idea what's going on. And God steps in. They were just continuing their journey. He's guarding them. They've got their objective in their mind. They're going ahead, and God's working behind the scenes. Does this sound familiar, church? Of all the but God stories that we've heard this summer, are we picking up on the pattern and on the theme here? We hear so many of these stories taking place even now. Many of you have shared your own stories in this time and in this season of God stepping in, and sometimes only realizing it years later as the rest of the story gets unpacked through different people. You had no idea at the time that God was stepping in that moment, and yet the trajectory of your life was changed. I mean, you had no idea in that moment. I've heard these stories at Men's Breakfast a couple weeks ago. Pastor Dave talked about it as well. We've heard these during the testimony times up here from the platform. We've heard these but God stories from the baptismal tank. I've had conversations with many of you as you journey toward and with Jesus on how God is stepping in and how he has stepped in and how he continues to step in. These stories keep coming and coming and coming. We have a God that isn't dead, but he is alive and he is working and he continues to be in the business of changing and saving and restoring lives. Man, that's exciting, isn't it? And he's doing it here, church. He's doing it here. And it's so exciting. But there's a tension that brings along too, because there's some of us that are sitting here right now and that's not our reality. We might be stuck in anger. We might be stuck in frustration. We might be stuck in depression, sorrow, despair. These are all real feelings and emotions that really kind of shape our viewpoints and perspectives, aren't they? And maybe you're saying right now, well, that's great for everybody else. I see all these stories. I see these lives being changed. But where's mine? Where's my but God moment? When is it my turn? Does God really love me? Am I blessed? Does he see me as a son or as a daughter? And if that's you, I get that. I've been there. That was me last summer. It was about 6 weeks of just pure feeling lonely and isolated and depressed and on the verge of just quitting everything. Until God showed up. I think we've all been there, haven't we? We can all kind of relate to like, God, where are you? I mean, we just came out of a series on Lamentations talking about that very thing. This is a reality of our life. And if you're in that place of questioning, or if you're already looking back at your own but God moments, here's a couple of things I think you can do to kind of gain some perspective. I love that we're in community church. I love that we talk. I love that we have conversations. I love that we have life groups. And I think one of the things that we can do is have an honest conversation with a Jesus-centered friend who's in your life and who's been walking with you. Maybe a friend, a counselor, a pastor, someone who's watched you over the last number of months, years, whatever it is, and ask them what they see in your life. Ask them where they notice God has been working in your life. Ask them to give you fresh and new perspective of how God has been at work. This is super helpful. It really is, because sometimes we're in those moments we can't see. Or sometimes, we only know what we know. And it takes the collective wisdom of those around us to actually help us get to that next step, or to pull us out of the pit of despair. We need each other. We were designed for community. And so I think talking to these folks, these Jesus-centered people in your life, can be very, very beneficial. Because here's the other thing they can do with you. As they talk with you, as they show you where you're at in your life, where God has been throughout all the years, they can pray with you. I had the privilege of someone asking me to pray with them this morning, and it was just so encouraging to me that someone would just actually invite me into their space to just intercede to God on behalf of another. It was so good. And in these moments when you're praying with them, you can invite God to speak into your situation right now, to open your eyes to what He's already doing. And the church, I want you to trust this. God is already at work preparing your next but God moment, even before you're asking for it. Let me say that again. God is already preparing your next but God moment. Because He loves you. Because He wants what's best for you. Because He wants you to bring along to this place of just pure dependence on Him. And He wants to lavish His love on you. He's at work. So keep sharing your stories, church. As we wrap up this series in the next couple weeks, let's not let it end there. Let's keep talking about what God is up to in your lives, in the lives of those that you see around you, in Lakewood, in Prince George. God is on the move. He's working to call His people back to Himself. So what do we do with this? How do we respond? Well, we're going to respond in the way we usually respond. And we're going to have some options here. We're going to begin with worship. Just as Balaam could only speak what God put in his mouth, we want our lips to declare what is true about God. We want to declare His faithfulness, His goodness, His power, His glory. Worship is one of the ways we align ourselves with His truth. So worship team, I'm going to invite you guys to come on up and prepare to lead us in song as we do that. You can engage in that way. We can also respond with communion. We have the table set before us. And communion is the ultimate but God moment, isn't it? Or the New Testament writer says, you were dead in your sins, but God made you alive in Christ. And so we come to the table to remember the cross and the resurrection. We remember what Jesus did this in the defining intervention of God in history and in our story. And so for those who have been asked to serve this morning, I ask you to come and prepare as well. Just a note. I got it, Denise. Just a note. In the bread, there's dishes in the middle of them with gluten-free bread. So if you are gluten intolerant, that bread is for you. If you can handle gluten, you get the stuff on the outside, not the glass dish. So just a word on that. How else can we respond? Well, for some of you, and I've already kind of talked about it, this might be a moment to pray. Maybe you're longing for your but God moment. Or you're walking through a season of questions and need God's clarity and encouragement. Our prayer team, Tara and Carol Joy, they're waiting for you in the prayer room, and they would love to come alongside you to listen, to pray with you, and to help bring your situation before the Lord. Do not carry this alone. Step into that space and invite God to meet you there. Now, the door is closed, and that's only for sound purposes. You can go in, come and go. It's great. The prayer room is open, even though the door is closed. So that's a note on that. And then lastly, we also have an opportunity to respond through giving. And giving is both worship and trust. It's saying, God, everything I have belongs to you, and I want to invest in what you're doing. It's a way of participating in God's ongoing but God stories in the life of others. And so we invite you to do that as well. The ushers to the second song, they're going to pass the offering bags around. We have the debit machine at the back as an option that way. If you want to participate that way, we also have online options. So we have a lot of ways you can participate that way as well. But today, here's the invitation as we respond. Don't just listen to the story. Don't just listen to these but God stories. Step into one yourself. Respond in this time, whether it be worship, communion, prayer, giving, and meet the God who still intervenes, who still blesses, and who still saves. Why don't you guys lead us?